it's not only trying to be the best successful business person that you can be,
trying to be the best lover,
but also have the best relationship with your wife too.
So I think the meeting pulse helps us to stay engaged and has really, really changed the nature of our dynamic.
It's like I have that feeling inside me that it was I was being heard. Mm-hmm. And so that was really important to me as a spouse.
Open honesty is also reflected in the bedroom, not just in the boardroom. Strengthen the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle in your family business. This is Fearless Family Business. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fearless Family Business Show. My name is Adam Hill. And this is my wife, Marie Hill. And the reason Maria is joining us today is because what I want to do is start up a new segment called Startup Spouses. I've interviewed a number of couples on this podcast who have started businesses together. And I believe that since COVID and really in the recent years, since we've started building businesses from home, a lot of spouses have started working together. And Marie and I, for many, many years, have actually been working together kind of separately. You know, I've been working from home. She's been working from home. And together we've been building a life together. And now we're on this entrepreneurial journey together. And I wanted to share and have her on so that we both could share some of our insights and ideas and experiences together on how we've been able to grow together. And that's really the nature of why we're doing Startup Spouses. So Marie, welcome to our show here.
Thank you, Adam. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's funny because like on camera here and like when we're together, I haven't really been nervous in front of you in years. And like now it's like, oh my gosh, we're doing a show together. We're gonna ask each other questions. So it's kind of weird. How are you feeling?
Pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, good.
So it's a different format, instead of like talking to each other, now we're talking to each other in front of a camera. So
that's right.
It's a little bit different. In
front of an audience of however many people are beyond that little screen right there. But, well, I'm excited about this though, because it's been a long time coming. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and I know and based on the insights that we've gotten from a number of my guests who are spouses, and if you go back in our episodes, even one of our first episodes was with Amanda and Joe Ben Barkey and the Dave and Joya Vanderland and a few others. I've really enjoyed those episodes because I've gotten insights into how spouses can not only build a business successfully together, but also grow their relationship together. And we've had a unique experience within the last couple of years where I feel like our relationship has broken through its own ceiling. We talk about in EOS, the idea of businesses breaking through a ceiling, that every single business on the planet hits a plateau. Yes. And then they break through. Mm-hmm. And we seem to have done that. And I'd just love to hear maybe your initial thoughts of what brought us to that point and how we broke through.
I would say I think it was when you approached, I know you've been using EOS in your business, but of incorporating a EOS-style family meeting every week, I believe that's what kicked everything off. So I know I was raising the kids, busy with the kids, and then doing all that fun stuff, running the household. I wasn't really, really thinking about where I wanted to go from there. Mm-hmm. So I think that with starting the meetings every week, starting off small goals, that I think that for me, it made me think bigger and bigger each and every time. So each and every quarter of it actually motivated me to want to see where I could go in the future and what my life would be like.
That's great. No, I love that insight as just to give a bit of context there too. We've been married 20 years, been together for 26. As of this podcast, a couple of days ago, we celebrated our 26th year together since we first met and went camping together. And in that time, lots of life happened. There was alcoholism and sobriety for me and for you having to go through that, living with me as an alcoholic, and all of the challenges we had beyond that, having two kids, and then, one of them having some special needs that required a lot of your attention
Yes.
while I was working. So, for a lot of that time, for a lot of those 20 years, we were, taken in different directions in a lot of ways. And there were ups and downs in our relationship. And maybe, and I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like, especially since we started implementing that weekly meeting pulse, which is kind of where I want to spend some time today, it did help us to bring us back on track. But do you feel that's where we hit a ceiling, was just kind of getting stuck in that kind of rut of the family and trying to balance family and work, as so many people do?
Yeah, I think what I heard recently was the divide and conquer sort of aspect to our relationship, and where we were just pretty much, okay, I take this, you take that. We were just hunkering down and pretty much trying to get through whatever crisis that was presented to us in the moment. And it seemed to be about a good 10 years of crisis after crisis, and just dividing tasks and just trying to get through it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really was. I mean, I think it's such a great way of putting it too. It was the divide and conquer kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And even saying it that way implies that we weren't against each other, during that time.
Mm-hmm.
We were working together, but working separately.
Yes.
And so we always struggled to find that connection. And I know that I'm sure that a lot of spouses, especially they're working together, working through a lot of crises, maybe having some of the similar challenges we did, feel the same way. And looking back, if you have, do you have, I mean, I have my own kind of feelings about well, would we have done anything differently? Or was the growth that we experienced, from going through that challenge, the resilience we built, would we have wanted it any differently? How do you feel?
I mean, looking back, yeah, I would love it to be easier, but
Sure.
I don't think it was in the cards for us. I think that for myself, I'm a slow learner. It takes me quite a bit of time to learn a new skill and to be, sometimes I need to learn it over and over again to get to a point. But I think that in reality, I think it presented itself, and the challenges that we've had is where has made us who we are today, which I love. So
yeah, I like how you put that, and I think it does look at the glass as half full, because everybody's going to face challenges, and this translates into business too. I mean, running a family is and running a marriage is like running a business. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the thing that separates out great businesses from mediocre businesses, one of those things is this idea that really, really great businesses recognize that every business on the planet is going to have issues, whether they're the best businesses on the planet or they're the worst businesses on the planet. Everyone has issues. Everyone, nobody is immune from them. It's the great, equalizer, so to speak. And the greatest businesses on the planet recognize that, but they also learn how to solve those issues effectively. And so that every week, every month, every quarter, they solve an elevated set of issues that can take them to the next level. I feel like that's what we've done. And as much as we kind of look back at with the difficulty we faced in raising through some challenging situations, the degree to which those were challenging, I think they also served the degree to which they were rewarding on the outcome of it, because we were able to work together and grow through it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're a family business owner or operator and you're looking to get more control over your business, I would love to talk with you. I want to give you a special invite to request a free 90-minute workshop with me to learn the powerful tools of EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system. Just shoot me an email at adam.hill@eosworldwide.com. Again, that email is adam.hill@eosworldwide.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Do you feel that there's a truth to the idea that you either grow together or you grow apart through challenge?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. And I don't think that one is better than another.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, sometimes people are in your life for a short amount of time. I knew from the very beginning, I think that this is a person that I wanted to grow with. And I think we early on made that commitment to each other. But in reality, it's also that not everybody has that. And not everybody has that opportunity where their spouse wants to grow or, wants to continue to do the hard things too. So
yeah, so they're almost growing at different speed, or they're almost, one stays at hitting that ceiling and the other's already kind of breaking through and trying to say, come on, and they're not going. So what do you do at that point?
Either you have acceptance or you need to move on.
Yeah.
That's the reality there. It's like you have to come to an acceptance, or you're coming to there's a resistance to that, and almost resentment.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that if you can't accept the fact that maybe one person, and it could be for a little bit, like this person, there could be some challenge and they don't want to grow, or they don't know how to grow. Right. It's like, if you are the spouse that is in the growth period, you've got to understand that sometimes that sort of thing happens, and maybe be curious about how or why that person doesn't want to grow, or maybe there's some anxiety that prevents them and prevents them from growing too.
Yeah.
So
I think curiosity is such a powerful tool when it comes to that, to self-evaluating that, or checking in on somebody else, or whether they're growing. Mm-hmm. I think you'd mentioned it earlier that one of the greatest tools that we kind of discovered on our path was, and it was somewhat by accident, was this idea of the weekly meeting pulse. And this does come from EOS. When we implemented EOS at my company, it was a game changer for us. I talk about it ad nauseum on this podcast. I share that with everybody here, that when we implemented it, things started to change dramatically. And I think just the idea of, well, what if we brought this dynamic into our relationship in some way? Is there any way that we could benefit? And, from my standpoint, I wrestled with it, because how do you broach the question of, hey, Marie, the woman I love, I'd like to have this standardized business meeting with you every week where we talk about data and scorecards and accountability and all this stuff. And I don't know, like when I brought it, like I don't even remember how I brought it up to you, but I remember that like I wanted to broach it carefully, because there was no way it would work if we weren't aligned on it. Mm-hmm. So how did you take it when we started when we started to talk about doing these weekly meetings?
Selfishly, it's like time I get to spend with you, and kind of going through what's going on in our lives. I think that was my motivational factor, is, oh yeah, I get this undivided attention with you to work on what's going on in the house. Right. Or maybe it's a honey-do list, which
or a gripe list, right?
Yes,
all these issues. We got to talk about issues.
Yes,
we got to solve issues. Yeah.
But knowing you and knowing reading Traction, I've also came to a point where I wanted to grow and wanted to be open to this sort of way of like having these meetings every week too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was. I know it was a game changer pretty quick. And there was a few tweaks that we made. I mean, so this is not by any stretch of the imagination, it is not pure EOS at all. It's just something that we've adopted into our lives to help us to that is equivalent to something that has helped in our business in terms of having these weekly meetings. And we've adopted some of the same tools in there. So walking through kind of what that weekly meeting pulse looks like for us, I think there's a few things if you're thinking as a couple of doing these meetings yourself. There's a couple of traps I think that I would recommend staying away from, and that is introducing this as something that is going to heal the marriage in some way. It works together, and this is a tool like anything else, and nothing external is just going to fix your marriage. It's going to take work to do it, and I think there's got to be alignment in that. In that between the spouses to make sure that both are willing to do the work. Yeah. The second part is if you're running a business and if you're running a family and you're running a marriage, those things need to be kept separate. This is not a meeting to go through the business stuff and the marriage stuff, because those two things kind of getting jumbled up, it's going to convolute things, and you need to have separate meetings for those, in my opinion. Because you need to drive towards getting that alignment in the business. If you're business partners, you need to talk as business partners. And if there's anything that kind of overlaps into that goes into, well, what are the kids doing this weekend? How's our intimacy or whatever that is? It's got to go into the marriage one. That's important. And then the third thing I would say, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, is one of the biggest things I think worked for us from the standpoint of having this weekly meeting as spouses, was the element of including an aspect of intimacy into it. And I think the way that we did that was really just saying like, hey, asking that question honestly is like, how am I meeting your needs this week? Not saying, hey, right off the bat, here's what I need, and here's kind of what I'm not getting. But really, it was more of like the curiosity of, hey, are we connecting on an intimate level? Am I meeting your needs and what you want? And let's talk about that openly and honestly, and be open to change. How does that hit you? I mean, like, how did that hit you as far as the intimacy side of the discussion?
I think that was the biggest game changer in the meeting, actually, because I didn't know how much you had conversations with, about, I know you're in GoBundance, and let's say you had these conversations. Mm-hmm. It's not only trying to be the best successful business person that you can be,
trying to be the best lover,
but also have the best relationship,
right.
Best relationship with your wife too. So I didn't know how much you were working on that. And it just came to light where, wow, this is something that he's actually wanting to do. Like I noticing that we started going on more dates too. Mm-hmm. And you really put in the effort for that, to do that. And so when you came in and just said, well, am I meeting your needs? It also took me kind of back, was like, well, okay, I'm in mom mode most of the time. What are my needs?
Right.
Like it let me just sit back, and we had that kind of that space to be like, okay, well, what exactly do I want?
Yeah.
And where and how do we approach that together without going on these dates and talking about the kids all the time too, and talking about businesses and just being present with each other. And what exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
That was the beginning, and how we started having those conversations and directing it towards intimacy was very important.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean,
and fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
I mean, it is fun. Sorry,
it is. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, like, I think that was the game changer for me, because you kind of reflected on like the things I was doing, and I appreciate that. But really, I think what was missing from what you were just saying there is that everything that you were doing. what you were introducing me to, the fact that you were being open to it, you were open-minded to meeting and discussing things openly, and sharing what you want, and sharing, where you were and the podcasts that you were listening to. It actually, I mean, another benefit to these meetings too is not just opening your eyes to how your spouse is feeling or how you were feeling, but things that I didn't know about myself. I mean, I grew up thinking that I was not a very, sensual kind of person, and like, all right, caution, it's going to maybe get a little PG-13 here. But but I didn't realize that I, had this, that I craved intimacy. And I think we all do crave that level of connection, especially from our spouse. But, growing up, and I think that, like many people do, I had a sense of shame around things like sex. So I never explored what I wanted or thought of what I wanted. This framework and your, introducing me to podcasts like Sex with Emily, gave me the ability to kind of, and the fact that we were discussing that in the, intimacy section of our meeting gave us the platform really to kind of talk openly about that and say, oh, I wasn't aware about that about myself, and it just frankly made our sex life way better,
Yes.
And I don't want to speak for you, but I mean, for me, it did. And did it make it that way for you?
I think it's the vulnerability that we had with each other, and able to step in that space of being uncomfortable with discussing these things, because it's not not mainstream normal to have these discussions about sex and intimacy and relationship, and it's more like, oh, he didn't do this, and it just makes more sense to have the discussion with your spouse, not in the bedroom, but
right outside of the bedroom. Yes,
but it made it more attractive, and it made it it made these meetings, that much more like intimate in a way.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
It's like I have that feeling inside me that it was I was being heard, and so that was really important to me as a spouse. So
yeah, and you may be listening to this right now and thinking like, whoa, hang on, family business show, why are we going down that path of sex? Because, well, I mean, yes, this regarding family business, when we're essentially marrying, pun intended, the idea of a husband and wife relationship and business. We're talking about a spousal relationship. Sex is a part of it, and if we're going to be open about our accounting or our business or what we're doing from a business standpoint or everything related to our kids, I mean, we have to be willing to do that, on the sexual standpoint too, and make sure that we're talking about that, making sure that we're meeting each other's needs and talking openly about it. Open honesty is also reflected in the bedroom, not just in the boardroom. Oh my gosh, write that down. That's great. I like that one. But yeah, so it's, so that's just making that aspect, like the intimacy part of the discussion, a part of that meeting was, I agree, was a game changer. I mean, it helped drive everything else too. So whereas like a meeting pulse, like we're talking about a weekly meeting pulse within EOS, within a business world, it would start with a segue. You'd start with some good news, and that's how we would start.
yeah.
It also then it would get into the data, and you might be thinking to yourself, okay, oh wow, now okay, in a marriage you're talking about data. What goes in there? So what are we talking about in data?
Budgets,
Yeah.
for food.
Super sexy stuff, yeah. I mean, but those things are things that we don't really talk about a lot though. In the marriage, sometimes like if there's a problem, what do? We hold it in and we keep resentment about it.
Yeah.
It's like, why are we spending so much on clothes, for crying out loud? Well, this gives us a format to do that in a healthy way. And granted, maybe this isn't for everybody. Maybe people might be hearing this and saying, wow, I could never with my spouse, bring up the idea of, oh, we're going to track this number and track this budget. But if you're committed to making the marriage work like a business, I mean, that's the way you should do it. So how does that, I mean, honest opinion, how does it hit you when we talk about like the scorecard stuff and the data side of it.
It's still uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I would say finances are my biggest anxiety standpoint. So I think that by exposing myself to it and like being able to do it in a calm way and keep measuring it, then we're not as out of control, and we're not having resentment towards each other due to the fact that we are measuring it every week too. So
right.
It's I mean, having these difficult discussions is important.
Yeah.
So I think that that's why I like these meetings is that we are able to bring things to the surface, any issues or problems weekly in order to get these things not building up and forming resentments towards each other. So that's what I feel that it's in why I know it's hard. It's not easy. And you go to these meetings, it's important to do it because then everything runs that much more smooth.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The sooner you can go into the danger, the better. And do it in a healthy way. I mean, healthy conflict is a muscle you have to build, especially in a marriage, in a relationship. You know, it is in a business too, when you're working with business partners, and this is a partnership, and it's a more fun, and it's a more dynamic, and it's exciting partnership that lasts a lifetime, and it's built in love, and so is family business. And the thing I like about the scorecard too is in business, we think about it as if you're on a desert island and you're spending an entire week on a desert island without any contact with the outside world. And every single week, a tropical bird flies in and drops a scroll on your lap with the handful of numbers that are going to give you an absolute pulse to tell you that everything's working. If you could do that in your relationship and say, and every week just get something dropped into your lap that says, hey, everything in the relationship that's important to us is working. Well, then great. Then you can like start to drive a scorecard, and you can start to think about what those numbers might be. Maybe it's date nights. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's how many hours you've talked to each other about your interests instead of talking about the kids or things you have going on. Think about that scorecard for you and what that looks like. Then the third thing we usually talk about is we get into our rocks. We set goals for the quarter. You know, we do that, and those are driven from really our annual goals in our annual meeting, which we talk about too. But yeah, what do you think about the quarterly rocks? Like, how has that evolved for you?
I think they're interesting because it started off really small because I'm like, what the hell am I going to write down? Like, like, I don't know. I'll just pick the little tiny little rocks, and then the reminder is like we got to pick out new rocks, and I was like, okay. And then as time went by, it's kind of like we set the annual meeting for each other. It's kind of like, oh, well, this is what I want my life to look like. So now I have to start setting goals accordingly too. So I think that was really important for me too. And they have evolved to this point where I was, doing real estate, and now I'm like, you know what I want? I want to buy a business. It's like, this is what I want to do. Now I'm laser focused on buying a business. So it's going to be exciting too. But it definitely has evolved, and to a point where I'm surprising myself where I started off with, and now where I am at. So it's exciting because shaping your future is pretty exciting. And then of course, measuring it every week and every quarter. So
yeah, that's insightful. I love the idea that the rocks that you're creating, it's like a discipline. And as you start out, you kind of start off maybe a little uncertain. The water's a little muddy and you don't know kind of what you're doing, but they almost drive into things, like they almost uncover new things, new goals or new desires that you want in the future. Like for you, it was buying a business, which is where we're at today.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel the same way. Just driving those rocks and being accountable to each other on achieving them is just another level of accountability, which is great. Then it gets into the headlines. Headlines, for us, like, they might be things like, what do we have going on this next week, so that we can stay on the same page with where we're going and we're not caught off guard when we say, oh yeah, remember this recital we had to go to tonight? I told you about that. Oh, when? Yeah, no, we have that weekly thing. We can get on the same page with everything we have going on. It also might just be, hey, this really cool thing happened to me this week, and I just want to acknowledge it. Or, hey, I just saw you do this amazing thing last week, or saw how you interacted here, and I just want to acknowledge you for that. Those are some of the headlines that would make sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
No, it was just making sure that you knew. I mean, it was like an undivided attention where we're not passing each other in like in the night.
Right.
Where like the shifts in the night where you're saying, oh yeah, we got this, and I'm like, I'm focusing on something else, but we're like physically sitting in the same room, saying to each other, this is what's going on this week. Oh, well, I have this.
Right.
And then we're like, oh, okay, well, we have such and such days to be able to be like, okay, well, you need to pick up this person, this kid from here, then I need to switch over to this, and do this, or, how to handle everything.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I mean, the whole thing that we're driving here towards is in having this weekly 1.5 hour meeting is it's intentionality. It's intentional time together. It's an intentionality around sharing information. It's so we're not just doing it in passing or as we're trying to scarf down dinner or something like that. No, it's intentional time together to be present with one another. And there's no amount of that if you're in love with each other, that doesn't improve your marriage. It's just really, really positive. And then getting beyond the headlines. So once you kind of dive off that, there's a to-do list. Of course, the to-do list is driven by a lot of the issues that you solved the previous week or that you try to solve. Usually those create action items, and there might be to-dos that are that just remind it. But I appreciate the to-do list because it helps me to really get that honey-do list kind of going. Like if there's stuff that we need to do and we're agreeing on it, we can get it on a list. We can be accountable to it. Again, I know that maybe some of you are listening and just like clenching your teeth thinking, how could I possibly bring my spouse in on something like this? And I know it sounds kind of overwhelming, and it took us a while to get to that point where we could do this and recognize that a to-do list or going through the issues like this would be valuable. But it was time well spent, and we started small. We started incrementally. We didn't go straight to, hey, we're holding each other accountable, and if you better do it or else. No, the accountability is based on trust and health. We trust, we built the trust together. And I think I don't speak out of school when I say that, our relationship before we got into this, it was with all of the years of just kind of being partners in putting out fires. It wasn't at a 10 at that point. We were maybe 6 or 7 floating by.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, speaking for me personally, I'm at a 10. I don't know about you.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Are you just saying that? I don't know. Is that,
No.
I want to know. I'm going to throw that on the issues list.
No.
Yeah. Yes.
No. I think our meetings lately have been 10s all the time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree. I think, and that kind of does get into the next section that we talk about, which is the issues list, which is where we talk about the issues that we have. It could be issues with the kids. It could be planning trips that we want to have. It could be just issues that we just don't feel like we're connecting in the right way. But it's a forum again where we can intentionally be together and be present in that moment with no phones, no anything else, and address the key issues that are happening and going into the danger, so to speak. And I think that a lot of times for us in those meetings, we're on the same page. Sometimes it gets heated, but it's not like we don't fall into mean spiritedness. You feel that way?
No, I don't think we do at all. Mm-hmm. It's weird. I don't know how that happened. I think it's more, I think what's going on is we're collaborating together instead of dividing and conquering. I think that, you know, having intentional meetings every week, being consistent with that is setting that stage for that this relationship is important, that we need to make sure that we are taking care of this relationship. And by taking care of it is like bringing issues to each other and not letting our ego get in the way of the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just letting go of blame in the situation. It's like, this is what's going on, and we work together to solve a problem as oh, well, I don't know what you're going to do about that, but good luck, you know, like, but we don't have, you know, when you're not setting the stage and being intentional with the relationship, that you're kind of just like, you might ask somebody, but you're not fully present with each other to solve a problem. So I think having that ability to be able to take that time every week, and it just gets easier to bring problems to the surface, because you're going to have to bring issues to the surface.
Yes. Yeah.
And you have to look at them.
Yeah.
So it makes it, now that, I mean, more and more you do it, it makes it easier. It's not so frightening. It's like, oh, they're just going to blame me for this. It's not even, we're yelling at each other like, you know, this is a problem right now, and I can't believe you're not focusing on it. So,
yeah.
I mean, we just take out the time and we're like, okay, well, we're going to solve this and get it done. So,
yeah,
together. So.
Yeah, it goes back to the key point that everybody on the planet, every spouse, every couple, every business has issues, and it's their ability to be able to solve those issues effectively without the ego. And I love that you put it that way, without the ego.
My ego gets in.
Of course it does. I mean, it's going to be there. Yeah. I mean, your ego gets them, not mine. But I mean, you know, but no, of course, egos are going to drive it. But it's just the ability to kind of work through that and have that intentional time of being able to solve it and solve it effectively. So, and then, you know, of course, we go to conclude and all that kind of stuff, but it does make us stronger. And we even incorporate a quarterly and an annual pulse into there. So we have full day quarterly meetings, an annual meeting where we go out and we do something really nice. And we really look forward to it. I mean, we really, really build it. We had a great annual session this year, you know, where we created our vivid vision for what our independently, we created our vivid visions, which is based on the book Vivid Vision from Cameron Herold. Individually, we created those by ourselves separately, came together, and we realized that we just have a very similar vision for what the next few years looks like. Such a great exercise too, and such a great way to build health between the two of us as a couple. But what would you like? So if there are people listening to this and they're kind of cringing at the idea of like having a meeting with their spouse, like maybe being able to bring them on board, right, with a meeting like this, what kind of suggestion? Because I've wrestled with this. I mean, I was very fortunate that you were open-minded to it, and that we worked out. But what would you say to somebody who is really struggling with this, to get like a spouse on board with this? I mean, should they just let it go for now if they're not on board? Should they try something different? What do you think?
I think that's it. First of all, maybe listen to this podcast.
Sure.
But no, if you're struggling talking to your spouse, you need to set aside some time together to have a discussion about the other person. Yeah. And it's not like a blame or here's my crazy scheme. I would approach it as something that you want to better communicate and have a better relationship with your significant other, and put this relationship first. And this is important for me. And I want us to be, I'm curious and curiosity is probably the best thing for it, of how we can grow together and because this is important for me. This is at the top of my list, and being able to have this time together. And maybe because I know we laughed about listening to this podcast, but I hope that like listening to it and understanding that the actual meeting is not that scary too. Yeah. And I mean, it can get uncomfortable having these conversations, but the more you talk about this stuff, the less uncomfortable it will be, and the more fun you can talk about planning trips or how you can meet each other's needs. So I think that's what I look forward to all the time too. So.
Amen. I mean, that's the thing. You get into more fun, and it is. If you become willing to go into the danger, it becomes more fun. And I think that's a great point that I can't really add anything to. If you're struggling with maybe getting a spouse on board with meeting regularly, or even having a conversation, curiosity, just ask the questions, not in a judgmental way, but in a genuinely curious way. So that's a great point. So I think that's really the meeting pulse that helps us to stay engaged and has really, really changed the nature of our dynamic. It's allowed us, I think, starting with that, it's opened up the door to a lot of things, to creating a powerful vision together, to opening up our idea to newer goals, to bringing us closer on an intimate level. All of these things, have been a benefit to it, to spending 90 minutes a week together intentionally, following that script, and willing to go there. Anything else to add?
Have fun. Yeah.
Why are we doing this if we're not having fun, right? I mean, that's the goal, right? I love it. It's a great place to end. Thank you, Marie, for being here. I loved it. I love talking to you, and I love being able to share this value with you on the podcast. And I wouldn't pick a better partner.
Oh, I love it. Thank
you. In
life
life and in business.
So cheesy.
Yeah. That's what we do. We're cheesy. All right. Well, everybody out there, thanks for joining us today on Fearless Family Business on this new series we're calling Startup Spouses. If you're startup spouses and you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. Please give us a rating. And if you know other startup spouses that might benefit from this, why not share it with them and see what they think? Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.